In 2015, the New Orleans City Council voted to remove its Confederate-era monuments. And after much preparation, several lawsuits, some threats of violence, and also great jubilation, 3 have come down in recent weeks, and the 4th and final one today. Early this morning, streets that connect to Lee Circle were blocked off, and traffic stopped, and the removal began. Those who support such deconstruction say that the symbols of the Confederacy represent slavery and injustice. And those who object say these symbols are simply historical. Which is true? This is a trick question. It's both. Our history in America is interlaced with slavery and injustice. The fact that most Americans have concluded is shameful and one to be owned as a mistake that has caused pain and torn apart lives. As a New Orleans City Councilwoman stated, we need not honor these individuals and moments from the past that do not meet our standards of decency and equality and non-discrimination. I applaud my hometown, the city of New Orleans, for having this very difficult conversation and taking on what is an emotionally charged and potentially dangerous task of dismantling monuments to an oppressive past, for taking the chance to live with more integrity. And we must support similar conversations and actions in our own city as well. We know how we got here. While some of our founding fathers, like Benjamin Franklin and Alexander Hamilton, had moral objections to slavery, the framers of our Constitution, by and large, believed that dismantling slavery would risk the support of the southern states, that it would cost too much, that it was too complicated and too divisive to those who held power. Instead, hypocrisy became part of our foundation. Avdut betoch cherut, slavery in the midst of freedom, a nation fighting for liberty while denying that liberty to its own citizens. So here we are today, grappling with systemic vestiges of this barbaric system and the war fought to preserve it. Our Constitution defective from the start, in the words of Thurgood Marshall. This week's parashah has another audacious example of Avdut betoch cherut, slavery-ridden freedom. It says, "You shall have one standard for the stranger and the citizen alike," the Torah proclaims. But then it goes on to explain in the very next chapter that if a fellow Israelite falls into financial straits and must become a servant to another, that servant must not be treated like a slave. However, such male and female slaves as you may have, it is from the nations round about you that you may acquire male and female slaves. Such you may treat as slaves, but as for your Israelite kinsmen, no one shall rule ruthlessly over them. These Israelites were people who had just suffered 400 years of harsh bondage. They were enjoying their first taste of freedom. The Torah is clearly aware of the horrors of slavery, calling it ruthless, and yet it condones the practice. This is the definition of hypocrisy. It seems that the Torah, like our founding fathers, understood that important conversations perhaps could be delayed, but not denied. It offers a process for reevaluating our practices and behaviors as history progresses. Later this summer, we'll read in Parashat Shoftim the following instructions. Ki yipale mimcha davar lemishpat. When a matter eludes you, you must appear before the judges in charge by Yamim Hahem at that time, and they will give you an answer. The Torah is saying that when a perplexing issue emerges, when something that was clear before ceases to be so, when you recognize something out of joint, The judges of that time must address it. Because of such an idea, our rabbinic sages have continued to develop their moral and ethical understandings and ruled with more and more surety that a free existence, of which slavery is a part, is an intolerable hypocrisy. That is why today the idea of owning slaves from any nation is unthinkable from a Jewish worldview. The challenge of harmonizing our stated values with our policies and our actions takes great courage and commitment to ideals. As Jews, we must be on the forefront of this work, wherever it is needed. It is needed in the United States as we confront our difficult past. It is needed within Judaism as we confront certain parts of our tradition that contradict the essence of who we are. And it is also needed in Israel. Achad Ha'am, the great Zionist thinker, wrote an essay entitled Avdut B'toch Cherut, Slavery Within Freedom, and in it, he articulates his dream of a place where Jewish people could not only be physically free, as perhaps they were becoming more so in parts of Western Europe at the time, but also spiritually and intellectually free, as perhaps they were not, where Jewish identity could flourish, and where Judaism could be expressed in all its creativity and grandeur. This particular dream has not yet come to pass because of the foundational conversation about the religious nature of the state was put off at its founding, delayed, and forfeited for the sake of the momentary needs. To this very day, Reform and conservative Jews are granted fewer freedoms and privileges in the land of Israel than they are in any other Western country. This is Avdut B'toch Cherut. It is worthy of the same process of reevaluation that we've applied to other instances of hypocrisy in our midst. Is there anyone in our congregation and in Memphis who believes we'd be better off without the full spectrum of Jewish religious expression that we have? We know there are issues upon which we'll never agree, and there is always a hard conversation before us, but those are a small price to pay for the exquisite diversity that we see and love. We are still excavating the history and peering into the future of our congregation and our city and our country and our global Jewish family. And there are hypocrisies we have yet to admit. But whether a war memorial or a Torah value or a religious identity, it is our responsibility to seek out these hypocrisies, to name them, and to block off streets and halt traffic and tear them down, brick by brick, stone by stone. When we do this hard work, then we can, as this week's Torah portion says, Ukratem dror ba'aretz, l'chol yoshveha, proclaim freedom throughout the land for all its inhabitants. May that time come swiftly and within our days. Ki yavo azman bimheira b'yameinu, ken yehi ratzon. Shabbat shalom.